when I reviewed Pablo Honey, I forgot to mention some details of availability. Other than it was released on CD, is Pablo Honey available on vinyl? Yes. And this is just a demonstration. This is actually a vinyl record of The Cars, not Pablo Honey. I just thought I'd show this just to show you what vinyl looks like. Is Pablo Honey available on iTunes? Of course. And is Pablo Honey available on Spotify? Yes. So, if you're not entirely sure about this album, feel free to give it a listen on Spotify since it is legal streaming. It was just recently reissued on vinyl, so finding a vinyl record of Pablo Honey should not be hard to find. And that's pretty much it about availability with Pablo Honey. Now, before I begin, I would like to give a shout out to my friend Brogan, who actually told me a little bit about this album with enthusiasm. And I recently talked with him to clarify if this was his favorite Radiohead album. And he told me that not only is this one of his favorite Radiohead albums, it is also one of his top 10 favorite albums ever. So, that being said, my Radiohead marathon continues with the bends. The Bends was released in 1995. Now, there actually is some history about this album. When Radiohead was touring to promote their debut album, like any other band would when they released their first album, Radiohead was experiencing some mental exhaustion by having to do the same old songs from each passing concert. So they decided to make new material and release a new album. Thus came the Bends. The album title comes from a nickname for decompression sickness, and one of the nicknames for decompression sickness is the Bends. Now, I have a hunch that Radiohead insisted on this title as an answer to the mental exhaustion of touring for Pablo Honey. Now, even though I consider Pablo Honey to be a decent album by Radiohead, how does the Bends fare out when compared to its predecessor? This album starts off with the track Planet Telex, or Telex. I'm not entirely sure what the pronunciation is, but what this song is good at doing is putting the listener to a good start. Now, when I first heard the Bends, I thought to myself, gee, this is off to a pretty good start. Now, I say this by experience because I have listened to this album like maybe 5 or 10 times, and I started to understand the purpose of what this first track is doing. It's just setting up the rest of the album, and the rest of the songs in this album support the purpose of this first track. Now, there's also a fun fact I would like to share about this particular track is that it was all done in one take, and lead singer Tom York was intoxicated while he was singing that song. So, I kind of find that a little amusing. What follows is the titular track, The Bends. Now, if Planet Telex didn't do much for you, then this track will, because after 4.5 minutes of this album, the listener is then greeted to Johnny Greenwood's badass sounding guitar. Now, not only does Johnny Greenwood prove his worth, so does drummer Philip Selway. When I first heard this song while going through this album the very first time, I had a feeling I was in for something. Now, I found Pablo Honey to be okay and some of the songs boring, but after 2 tracks, I was starting to really dig the Bends at this point. High and Dry is a track that I personally enjoy most of the time with this album, even though Tom York personally hates this song. Now, the song does sound pleasant, but the lyrics don't suggest so, and obviously this is because Radiohead is known for juxtapositioning the lyrics and the song's beats and everything. So keep in mind, just get used to me hearing me say this a few times when I talk about Radiohead's albums. High and Dry may come off as mopey to some people, but considering what Radiohead was going through mentally, as well as what the album was intended to go for, I thought High and Dry was appropriate for the Bends, even if Tom York personally hated the song over the years. And just because Tom York hates the song doesn't stop me from enjoying it for specific reasons, so I'm gonna just leave it at that. 3 words: fake, plastic, trees. This track is beautiful as well as emotional. Enough said. After going through 1/3 of the album, there is the track Bones. Now, this track in particular sounds a little bit more aggressive than the tracks that came before it. Now, Bones is not the only track in the Bends that sounds aggressive. There's another one, and I will talk about that soon. As for this track alone, it's pretty good. Nice Dream is another one of those tracks where it sounds pleasant but not 100% pleasant. I don't know about you, but I like this song. I got a couple of things to say about the track Just. If you ever give this track a listen, I can guarantee you this, that you might find it to be one of the catchiest Radiohead songs before they ever released OK Computer as well as Kid A, or any subsequent album for that matter. This is one of the earliest examples of a catchy Radiohead track. Also, Just kicks so much ass with Tom York's acoustic guitar sound alongside Johnny Greenwood's electric guitar sound. It is no wonder why Just is one of my favorite tracks in the Bends. My Iron Lung is a notable track for one reason. My friend Brogan told me one time that My Iron Lung is Radiohead's reaction to the song Creep, which was in Pablo Honey. Now, I wanted to double check on that before I actually brought this up, and it turned out that actually was the case, and he was right on that account, because that was something about My Iron Lung that I didn't know. And also, about the song Creep, did you know that part of the guitar riff they used was actually borrowing a song from the Hollies known as The Air That I Breathe? Here's a little comparison. I think it's a safe bet that My Iron Lung sounds more original than Creep, and this is by far the most aggressive sounding song in this album. Bulletproof I Wish I Was is an effectively slow track, and considering how this album's been flowing, I don't mind this track being slower than the others. And if I remembered correctly, I read up that the lyrics of the song are implying that Tom York wishes he wasn't so sensitive. But as the track itself, it's fine. Black Star, in my opinion, by default, may be the weakest track of this album. And I'm not saying Black Star is a bad track. It's pretty good. It's just, it's not as strong as the tracks that came before it and the tracks that come after. But I still like it. I just don't have much to say about it. Sulk is the penultimate track in the Bends, and considering how introspective this album has been up to this point, I find this track well placed. Street Spirit Fade Out is the track that concludes this album, and even though the lyrics make this track seem pretty bleak, and I'm saying this in a good way, the final lyric is quite uplifting. Despite all the bleakness that this final track has, What makes the last lyric uplifting is the lyrics are, immerse your soul in love. And considering what this entire album has been going through, this final track puts the cherry on top of this great album. Even though the Bends is obviously available on CD, it is also available to purchase on the iTunes Store and similar places. It is also available to stream on Spotify, and it was just reissued on vinyl. So finding a vinyl copy of the Bends should not be hard to find. It may be $20, but it is worth every dollar and cent. Overall, the Bends is a massive improvement from its debut album, Pablo Honey. Even though I do find Pablo Honey to be one of the weaker albums by Radiohead, I do think the Bends was just as introspective as Pablo Honey. But the major difference between the two is that the Bends is listenable from start to finish, whereas Pablo Honey, I found myself skipping some of the tracks. I could not skip a single track in the Bends. Also, my friend Brogan told me a couple of things of what he thought about this album, and I got his permission to disclose what he thought of this album. He has stated, "I like it because every song on the album is good for a repeat listen. I don't think there is one song off that album that I haven't heard played on the radio at least once." He does bring a good point because I find Radiohead to be criminally underplayed when it comes to American radio stations. He also stated, "The Bends is, in my opinion, the most solid Radiohead album with hits throughout that are infinitely replayable." I can honestly tell you that after listening to the entirety of the Bends, I thought to myself, this was a really good album. This album grew on me, and after evaluating the lyrics, the guitar instrumentation, the drumming, I love this album, and I can see why this album grew on a lot of people that have heard the Bends. I think enough has been said about this album. I enjoyed every single track of the Bends, and I love this album from start to finish. To my friend Brogan, thank you. Thank you, because the Bends gets an A+. If you like this review, feel free to hit the like button. And if you want to follow my channel, please feel free to hit the subscribe button. And you're welcome to leave me any band or music artist recommendation in the comments section down below. And as always, you're welcome to leave me a comment if you feel so inclined. And thanks for watching. As I conclude this review, I would like to make a quick note that my next album review will not be on OK Computer. Now, I will talk about that album eventually, but my next album review will be on the debut album of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, now that their new album, The Getaway, is coming on June 17th. So I have some Red Hot Chili Peppers albums I would like to talk about before their new album comes and I review it. So until then, I will see you in the next review.